Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. Hope you have a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and I wanted to talk to you guys about our continuation of dealing with the bosses of Sin City. We're currently in Cobble Market for November the 11th, 2024, as of the time of this recording, and we're going against C13. So C13 in this particular regard is going to be Ice Golem, and then also we're going to be dealing with, I believe that is Koldath, Magma Dragon, if you're not familiar. So this is normal Ice Golem, and this is Magma Dragon. So some key things that you need to be aware of, I talk about this all the time, is knowledge is power. So this is gonna be kind of a thing for our particular thing. Learn the fight, learn information about these bosses and what makes them tick, and then learn where you can get value out of both of them at the same time. So with that being said, let's take a peek here at what we're dealing with. So Clysis in particular is 100 speed, with his allies being 105 and 80 respectively, and of course Koldath being 100. So pretty slow. Your base speed alone should be faster than that for the most part on most champions, unless you're using someone like Rosin. Anyways, with that being said, they also have resistance checks pretty much around the same thing here. The resistance is 150 across the board, which means that if you want to land a 95% chance of success rate, 175, I would probably try to aim for like 200, maybe 250 just to play it safe. His accuracy and across the board for everybody is about 100, so you want 205. I'd say maybe 250. Maybe take it to 280 if you want to go a little bit more above and beyond to make sure that you resist some of the debuffs that these guys apply. Now, with that being said, what is good against this fight? Well, against this guy, obviously you can do high output, high damage, but you have to watch out for two things. One, on the Clysis side, so the Ice Golem side, you have to watch out for his thresholds. Whenever he goes below his thresholds, he does damage and he revives any dead minions that he has. He has two that he's going to bring out. So, if you're going to do those checks, you got to be careful about the output of the repercussions or the reaction that the boss is going to have. Be careful with that. And then, of course, on the other side of that, you're going to also have to watch out for Koldath, aka Magma. Whenever an HP burn is placed onto him, it's converted into a continuous heal, as you can see by his lethal lava passive. So, those are some very important things. Individually, when I first was handling these bosses, when I was coming up myself, I would just do Provoke on this guy and then just Battle of Attrition the rest of it, right? If you can keep Provoke, you don't have to worry about all his other extra abilities where he applies a Hex, which is kind of like a setup for him to be able to do pretty much a KO hit that ignores 100% defense and all that stuff like that, right? So even if you were to be tanky with your team, it could be kind of a problem. Now, with that being said, I'm going to show you guys my brute force attempt. I believe I've already beaten this boss before. I used this team in particular. I'm going to spice it up a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and throw in... Let's do this. Let's do this. I know this is HP burn related, and I want you guys to see the mechanic in action, but I'm going to just kind of have some fun with this. Because also my Gizmek is pretty well built. We're going to boost up the team. Everybody's under HP burns. He's getting continuous heals out the wazoo, so we got to watch out for that. But I am going to plan to like kind of knock him out of the fight pretty early on. We did do some damage. We hit him. We broke him through some thresholds, so you're going to see him do a couple of hits in rotation. That's 2, and I think we hit him down to like a third. So he's going to do another hit here, and there might be one more that we might hit. We're getting counterattacks out the wazoo, so some of our guys are starting to die, which is a bad sign. I'm going to go ahead here and heal up the team. I wasn't expecting that many counterattacks, but nevertheless, we're going to keep it going. I don't want to apply more debuffs here, so I'm just going to go ahead and just do as much damage as I can. And then we're going to rock it out with the last little bit, and he's dead. So I'm able to brute force it, obviously, as you can see, because I have some pretty nice champions and decent builds. So not everybody can do that, right? And, of course, I got a little lucky with some counterattacks. I think that was Masteries for Creodin and then Passive for Rhonda, or maybe even Mastery from Rhonda, too, as well. Counterattack Masteries, right? Now, with that being said, we're going to kind of play this a little bit differently, and how we're going to try to do this is you do want some sustain, because whenever the boss hits and it counterattacks on his threshold, for Clysis, he does have a chance to do cause some issues, right? So, freeze debuff. That's a bit of a problem. A cleanser or block debuff could be very valuable. In particular, I had Ugo in this team for that matter. She's a healer and a debuff cleanser. So that's not bad for value. You could also technically, let's see what else we have. We have Elva in play, who is great to provide block debuff ahead of time. Also is a healer and a reviver. So you got something with continuous heals with their A1. A2 is the cleanse plus the block debuff, as well as the A3 for the revive in case something goes south. So really good champion there. I didn't mention this earlier. We are going with Ogryn, Bannerlord, Sylvan Watcher, and Dark Elves as our particular ones. I am actually going to go ahead and recommend Gestel's website if you guys want to see a little bit of an option here. You can kind of set up your filters. We can clear everything here, and then from there for champions, we're going to try to see if we set up based off of that. So you can select your factions. You can select if there's any particular other requirements, like it's only magic-based, which is the affinity. You go there, set that. Let's do this real quick so you can kind of get an idea. I think it said Bannerlords. I remember seeing Ogryn. I remember seeing, let's see if my memory's good, Dark Elves, and I believe Sylvan Watchers. Those are the 4. Let's check ourselves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ogryn, Bannerlord, Sylvan Watcher, Dark Elves. I'm on the money. All right, so those are our requirements, right? It'll show you everything that's available. We want to talk about like some skills or anything in particular. I'm going to actually suggest looking for either, let's see, instance we could do instead of like cleanse. Maybe I'm not exactly sure how they word it on this one. We're going to look for it here. Remove debuffs. There you go. That's one option. That's one of the most important ones that we want to kind of keep in mind. So, Routhrip, you obviously see Elva. You see Foley here, which I believe is his passive. King Galkabar may have some options there where it's a 3, gives a shield as well as continuous heals. But it is from all enemies, or all allies, excuse me. So that's a good value there if you get them. Sethalia could be another one too. I believe it's Lordly Embrace. Removes it from a target ally and then places block debuff. And then, of course, Ugo, who I mentioned earlier. So those are some good options just to consider. You could also maybe change this out to as well. Instead of it being an instant, let's go ahead and remove that out of the picture. Let me find it real fast, remove it, and we're going to look for a buff, which is block debuffs here. We're going to filter, and you're probably only going to see the 2 that we saw earlier, which is Elva and Sethalia, because they kind of have their stuff interchangeable with each other. So that's one champion that you probably want to try to find a way to bring to the table in some capacity to keep your team alive. And then, of course, from there, it is just a matter of spank and tank. So you want to kind of get some debuffs, maybe with Ugo also on the table. She brings decreased defense, so you can start doing some damage. If you want to play around the Clysis doing his thresholds, because he has amplified damage for each minion that's on his team. You get rid of the minions first, then you can target Clysis. Or on the flip side, you want to kind of do damage. You could try to brute force if you want to, since you have the protection needed to keep yourself alive. With that being said, for Clysis, because you can provoke him, it's a little bit harder. I believe for me, one of the only options I have, if there is any, let's see. We're going to go to our skills here. We're going to remove block debuffs, and we're going to add provoke to the options here. We're going to filter by it and see what we got here. You got Ignatius if you have that champion. Who is Magic Affinity, is also part of the Ogryn, so he facilitates the restrictions, and his A3 is pretty good. Then you also have Sigmund, High Shield, who has a Provoke on his A2, I believe it is. And then, of course, Arndulf, which is an Epic, as well as Grimskin. Kaiden might be a way to provoke on the A1, but also has a revive, so you got some options there for some sustainability. I'd probably recommend him out of all the ones that I see from the epics. And then, of course, it gets a little bit lower with the rares. You have some provokes and whatnot, and I would say be a little cautious there. You might have some value out of Myrmidon if you want to try to incorporate him, since he has continuous heals and ally protection, help you sustain through some of that damage you're going to take. But I would probably recommend like someone like Kaiden, maybe Myrmidon, and then, of course, obviously any of the legendaries that are above mentioned. And then after that, it's pretty much spank and tank. You got, decreased defense, and then maybe some leech if you want to have some survivability and whatnot. Now, if you don't have any of those champions that provokes, you can also refer to provoke set. And the main goal is, if you're going to be dealing with one boss, you want to kind of have the other boss kind of addressed in some capacity. And by having that provoke up on the boss, he'll only attack that champion with his base A1 skill, and you won't be doing all that extra stuff that could do a lot of disruption for your team. And in the meantime, you can deal with Clysis on that side. So, say for instance, hypothetically, this was my Arndulf or my Sigmund shield guy here who has the provoke, or I can even use him himself as a provoke set champion. And then, of course, some damage dealers. We won't use HP burn here. We'll play a little bit safe. Maybe Rhonda, maybe that Creodin, or maybe you got lucky and you got Siege Hulk, which gives you increased attack, decreased defense. You can use maybe something like that, and you can play into the fight. This will work just fine. Because the way this will go, you'll end up placing your debuffs up, and you're protected, and you're good to go. You can set up with your champions and do some damage. Obviously, your nukers are going to hit. Remember, you're going to prioritize doing some damage to this guy, so we're going to just start beating into him and start killing him pretty quickly. Obviously, the more better your builds, the higher it's going to go. You only have to watch out for hitting basically 100 plus speed. If you want to go 200, that means you're almost going twice as fast as the opponent. It's not exactly verbatim. It means your turn meter is going to be growing a little bit higher. And, of course, you just keep hitting into it in the interim, and you're pretty much good to go. And being able to outpace your opponent is pretty good. Now, I did say, for instance, we were going through the Battle of Attrition and one of my nukers died. Having Elva in play helped us out. Having Ugo in play helped us out because now we're able to sustain. And now I'm back to my tip-top shake of being able to do a decent amount of damage here and focus on just basically doing enough output to kind of get the boss down. This is where the spank and tank side of things come into play. There's obviously resistance that you can also apply to your champions to give them a little bit elevated room to not take debuffs, but pay attention here. Elva, because she cleansed somebody else, has also now taken that Hex. And if you don't have a Provoker in play, he's going to start opening up with some of these other abilities that are going to be pretty dangerous with being able to ignore 100% of the target's, defense. That could be a big problem. So keep that in mind, that you want your Provoker to keep the aggro of the boss so he can take most of the damage, and the one that holds the Hex could be, Elva, and you won't take that extra 100% ignore resistance or ignore defense damage output, and you can keep the ball going. I would say big MVP here is definitely going to be Ugo, because you got Leech, heal, set up for decreased defense, and really, really good value in terms of being able to do some good output here. Now, I want to show you something else here as well to keep in mind. If you're thinking, oh, well, she also brings block debuff, be careful, because even though you set this up, if I were to place a burn here, look what happens. Nothing happens. The block gets debuff. So it's okay there, but be aware that unless this debuff is up, he's going to get a continuous heal. So if you do decide to bring HP burn champion like your Gizmak or like your Aphidus, for example, if you got him, or you can include some other champions that may have HP burn into play. Your Ignatius, since he could come in as a burner as well as a provoke champion for this fight. You got to be careful with making sure that your timing with having the debuff up in place is already established, and then you apply it so that Crisis can get dealt with, but you're also mitigating the survivability of Magma Dragon being too much of a problem there. So that's what I would recommend. And then at that point, it's about a Battle of Attrition. If you want some recommendations for stats here, obviously the above 200 for either resistance or accuracy is probably ideal. Probably get closer for Cobble Market. It's roughly around 250, I would say, is pretty much the sweet spot of what you're looking for. And then, of course, Sustain being the name of the game. And then, of course, if you want to incorporate some control on the Magma Dragon, get some Provoke in there somewhere. And then, of course, after that, it's just Spank and Tank. Anyways, with that being said, what do you guys think? Do you have any other alternative options you would like to bring to the table? I did talk about some other key champions that can do some pretty cool stuff with not only providing extra resistance in dungeons, so it wouldn't be valuable for her here, but increased resistance, excuse me, on the A3 could help you out with surviving and maybe not taking some of those debuffs like freeze and whatnot. Of course, with a heal, all allies, and then, of course, decreased speed. And then I believe whenever they lose a certain amount of health within a single hit, you can get continuous heal from Oella. She's a great champion to help with some form of sustain, which is really, really good. And then she can also boost your team into being more active in the fight too as well. Let's see, is there anyone a little bit more closer to home that could be valuable for you? Obviously, you can poison the boss, go the debuff route, which is fine. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this when I was first looking at this boss. I was like, man, I could just throw in like a solo build poisoner, and I could probably get the value I need out of all of them. Like all three of the different types of champions you fight in this particular, the two bosses and the minions, they all can get hurt by poison. So, like if you're running a AoE poisoner, you can get the job done pretty well here. But I'm not really seeing any crazy options. I do see that we have Dark KO, which you can get from the Doom Tower, but the thing is, though, is he only places on a singular target. So over the course of the battle, you kind of want to get them all down gradually within a decent amount of time. And those type of builds require you to have some high sustain regeneration, probably, as well as, resistance, accuracy, speed, and then, of course, defense and HP. So it's a lot to kind of force onto one champion if you're earlier progressed. But nevertheless, he could be an option for maybe you don't have a Ronda, but you need a damage dealing capacity. He could be that. Same thing as regular KO. You can technically do that too as well. Your results will obviously vary, but something's better than nothing, right? So damage deals are pretty interchangeable. Just make sure you hit the requirements you're looking for stat checks, and then pretty much you're good to go. With that being said, let me know what you guys use on your team. I brute force everything, so it's kind of not fair of an assessment to say. But nevertheless, I try to provide some options for you guys to work with. With that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, always remember, stay ascended.
after you. I'm with the same crew, so it's 100 on the score.